17 language corpora Indian scenario. So far in last 16 modules we have tried to focus on various areas, aspects, domains of language corpora. In this module we are more specific. We are trying to locate our attention on the corpora developed in Indian languages. So, in this module, we will be considering only few corpora that are still available, or corpora development project which has been done at pan-Indian level. First one would be the Kolhapur corpus of Indian English. Second one, the TDIL corpus, the first corpus in Indian languages. Then third one, the ILCI corpus, Indian Languages Corpora Initiative. The fourth one is LDC IL and some other resources. So, with regard to corpus generation, we must say that the corpus generation task in Indian languages actually formally started with the compilation of the Kolhapur corpus of Indian English. In 1978, Professor Shastri initiated a project to develop a corpus of Indian English exactly in the form of the Brown corpus and the Love corpus, with a goal to make it a comparative resource of Indian English. So, the designing principles, the domains, the texts are almost similar that has been followed for Brown corpus and the Love corpus, but here text came from Indian English only. So, if you look at the structure of the Kolhapur corpus, we can very clearly understand that the designer had a very clear idea what it is going to do and how it is going to do. So, they wanted to have a corpus that can be maximally comparable to the Brown and Love. That is why if you look at the text, you can find out table, you can find out that the composition of Kolhapur corpus is almost similar. I am giving you a statistics or table here. Like that of Brown corpus and Love corpus, it has also two parts. One is informative text, another is imaginative text. In case of informative text, within the domain of press reporters, all three had 44 samples, and press reporters editorial 27 samples, 17 samples from press reviews, 17 samples from religions, 38 samples from skills and trade and hobbies, 44 samples from popular lores, 70 samples from personal letters, 37 samples from miscellaneous. But there are certain differences, and 80 samples each from learned scientific writings. But in the distributions in the Kolhapur corpus are somehow different in certain contexts, just because of the non-availability of texts. In cases of imaginative texts also, we can find out that in cases of general fiction, while Love and Brown has 29 texts each, Kolhapur corpus has 58 texts, because in other domains texts are not available. In cases of mystery and detective fictions, we have got 24 texts from each domain, from each corpus. In science fictions, while Love and Brown has 6 samples, we had only 2. And in adventure western fictions, as there are 29 texts from Brown and Lobb, Kolhapur has only 15 texts. And so also in cases of romance and love story, they have got 29 texts each, while Kolhapur has 18 texts, because this is the non-availability of texts. But the important thing is that the total number of text samples included in the corpus was all exactly same, 500 for each of the languages. The KIC is meant to represent the Indian English used in printed and published documents, and the text samples were accumulated in a simple, stratified and random manner from the following sources. These are the major sources where from the texts were collected. The printed books, there are 140 samples from 1200 titles of different disciplines are collected. There are government documents where from the text samples are collected, 37 samples texts from central and state government documents, 53 sample texts were collected from press materials, of which 6 came from national and 15 from regional English newspapers, and 170 text materials were collected from all fields and disciplines that relates to periodicals. The referential value of KIC or Kolhapur corpus is attested in its faithful representations of sample texts for describing the actual form and nature of Indian English. First, it has succeeded to establish a distinct texture of Indian English, enriched with unique lists of Indian words and terms. Second, it has faithfully reflected on the differences of syntactic patterns and semantic loads of Indian English. Finally, it has established the independence of Indian English from the overwhelming shadow of British and American English. Thus, KIC has become successful to establish the Indianness of Indian English as a notable phenomenon of the post-independent India that has achieved a distinct and discernible linguistic identity within the last few decades. But there is certain limitations. It is, however, very clear that Kolhapur corpus cannot claim to be maximally representative of the Indian English, because it is built to ensure maximum comparability with other English corpora, that is Brown and Lobb corpus, rather than developing a maximum representative text database of Indian English. In spite of several limitations and shortcomings, we must agree that Kolhapur corpus has registered immense referential value in Indian linguistics in general, because it provides an opportunity to us to analyze Indian English with close reference to a real-life language use of English. In fact, the availability of Kolhapur corpus has made it possible for us to observe the distinct feature of Indian English, which not has been attested before so elaborately, so statistically accurately. Till date, it is used as one of the primary resources of Indian English, and it is made open for researchers for various linguistic activities and investigations across the globe. So, Kolhapur corpus has a very importance in analysis of Indian English. The next massive, the largest project in Indian language corpora is called the TDIL corpus, Technology Development for Indian Languages, which started in 1981 and ended in 1995. There are several goals of this corpus. The goals are like this: to develop information processing techniques and tools for all Indian languages, to facilitate human-machine interactions crossing all language barriers, to create, share, and access multilingual knowledge base and knowledge resources, and to integrate resources and tools for developing innovative, user-friendly products and services for the people. So with those goals, the project for Corpora generation in Indian languages started in 1981. Several teams were involved into it. At least we know that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different institutes or 8 different institutes across the country were entrusted with the task of generating corpora in Indian languages. The Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, was given the entrusted with the task for generating corpus of Indian English, Hindi, and Punjabi, while CIL, Mysore, was given the task for generating corpora Tamil, Malayalam, Telugu, and Kannada. Deccan College, Pune, was given the task for generating corpus for Marathi and Gujarati. Indian Institute of Applied Language Sciences, Bhubaneswar, was entrusted with the task for generating corpora for Odia, Bangla, and Assamese. Sampurnananda University, Sanskrit University, Varanasi, was given the task for Sanskrit, and Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh, was given the task for developing corpus for Urdu, Sindhi, and Kashmiri. Although not spelled out, several other distant motives of the project was clearly visualized, and these were also kept in mind to develop the corpus. While developing corpus, all those goals are kept in mind. The basic goals like that: to develop a representative text corpus for each of the Indian languages that would stand as a representative of the language. That is very much necessary in the new frame of language research. To develop language processing tools, systems, techniques to facilitate the man-machine interaction and interfaces. To ensure multilingual knowledge management and sharing across Indian languages, including English. To promote development of techniques and systems for cross-lingual investigation, studies, and research. To generate linguistic resources for machine translation, information retrieval, and language education. To build machine translation systems among the Indian languages and from English to the Indian languages. To develop man-machine interaction and interfaces needed for information exchange across all Indian languages. And finally, to develop computer-assisted language education system in the Indian languages. So these were the basic goals which are also visualized while developing the TDL corpus in Indian languages. So while the whole effort started for developing corpus on these languages, there are certain vital questions that needed to be addressed. And the questions were related to something like this: why there was a need for developing a digital corpora in Indian languages? Who were to develop this corpora and how? How large this corpora would be in total number of words? Who would be using this corpora and how and where? What kind of text should be included in those corpora? How much time would be spared or required to develop to this kind of corpus in Indian languages? Which time span should be represented in the corpus? How data of actual language use would be collected and stored into the machine? What kind of formalities should be adopted for data storage, text representation, data management, and utilizations? Many such questions which came up at the time of corpus generation were not easily solved. In the process, when the whole task continued, scholars who were involved in this project gradually tried to address these questions and tried to come to a common consensus that this way or that way would help to address these questions, to address the problems that are coming up. There are also some crucial issues in the actual task of corpus generations. These are mostly related to the texts, to the materials, to the documents that should be considered for corpus generation. First issue was like the corpus size, how big the corpus would be. Initially, it was planned that each of the languages included in the project should have a corpus of 10 million words of running texts. But when the project started, it was clearly understood that within a short span of time, it is perhaps not possible to generate corpus of that huge size, because technology in 1991 was not much advanced one where web resources could be easily accessed or could be utilized, or in fact that web resources in different Indian languages were not at all available at the time. So we had to minimize the target. Finally, it was decided that okay, in place of 10 million, 3 million should be enough for us for the time being. Next issue was text representation. What kind of text should be considered for inclusion in the corpus? After much debate, it was decided that text samples should be collected from all kinds of texts which is available at the time. Selections. Selections method would be meticulously done. It can be both random and selective methods. Wherever there is an option for selection, we should go for selection. Where there is no option open for selections, we should include whatever is available. Time span, another important issue to be decided. It was decided that let us first have a small time span, say a 10 years time span, so that we can have materials within this 10 years. So it was decided that text produced and published between 1981 to 90 would be considered for inclusion in the corpus. Documents. How the documents should be classified? Since there was no predefined guidelines, it was collectively decided that samples may be classified based on subjects, year, or name, or something like that. Newspaper text should also be taken into consideration. All the text from all the major newspapers should have certain amount of representation in the text corpus, and also classified based on the names, years, months, and dates. Books should be collected wherever possible. So maximum domains should be completed or covered. So at present, finally it was decided that nearly 85 different disciplines are identified where from books are collected and data are collected from them. With regard to the authors of the books, there was also a crucial issue to be decided. It was also decided that text produced by all authors, irrespective to any caste, creed, orientation, gender or sex, or any demographic variables, should be considered for inclusions. So there would be no bias, no selections with regard to the authors. Now the question comes, who would be the target users? Since it was a sample pilot project and the texts are in general type and the corpus is a general type of corpus, people from all walks of life were visualized to be the users. They could come from all walks of life and they can use for all kinds of language related study, investigation, application, culture, and many other things. So following those guidelines or instructions or collectively agreed upon principles, the corpus generation work started. Ultimately, after 3 years of run, we produced a corpus for all 17 Indian languages, each one having 3 million words of running text, covering almost all possible printed and published text documents. The value of this corpus can be easily understood once you look at the corpus data. It has multiple application potentials. These corpora now present a better scope for studying variations of relations of linguistic elements across all text types in a language. They provide a wide spectrum of language use to study the frequency of occurrences of various linguistic items in the language. They provide a far better opportunity for exploring the behavioral patterns of various linguistic elements in regular language use. These texts confirm the increment in number of citations to provide facilities for systematic classifications of linguistic terms in terms of their uses and meanings. Now these corpora give us a far better opportunity for obtaining statistical results of the linguistic elements for making various linguistic and extra-linguistic observations. These corpora also give a wide spectrum of studying the pattern of use of lexical items for generalizations as well as for writing grammar of the languages. These corpora are maximally faithful for providing data in information for understanding or writing a descriptive grammar or descriptive study on the patterns of use of compounds, collocations, phrases, idiomatic expressions, and other various linguistic elements available in the language. This corpora gives us good scope to identify the new words and terms coming into language, new technical terms used in the language, also to track how the old terms have lost their places in the language. In fact, this corpus has been one of the most reliable and faithful resource of Indian languages to study the present status of the language of Indian languages. The further application potentials can be visualized in the applications of this corpus in studying Indian language for machine translation purpose, as well as for document analysis and categorization purpose, generation of parallel text corpus in Indian languages. So TDL corpus is one of the most useful resources still available now at present for us for all kinds of linguistic research and applications. The next one is Indian Language Corpora Initiative, that is called basically in a translation parallel Indian translation corpus in Indian languages. In 2012, we started the ILCI project, Indian Languages Corpora Initiative, where basic task is to develop 50,000 post-tagged parallel sentences in each of the Indian languages involved in the project. Thus, we are going to have a large collection of parallel sentences across all Indian languages. So, in the languages, almost 12 languages are included. The several institutes, equal number of institutes are included in this project. So, the languages which are included: Bangla, English, Gujarati, Hindi, Konkani, Malayalam, Marathi, Odia, Punjabi, Tamil, Telugu, and Urdu. And the institutes that took part in this project are ISI Kolkata, Jawaharlal Nehru University, Gujarat University Ahmedabad, then Goa University, IITM Kerala, Indian Institute of Technology Mumbai, Utkal University, Punjab University Patiala, Tamil University Tanjavur, Dravidian University Kuppam, and so several other universities have taken part. So the most important feature of the ILCI corpus is that it preserves the parallelism in the text types and sentence structures at the highest possible level across all Indian languages, making this corpus a maximally suitable database for cross-lingual information retrieval, core grammar generation, development, machine translation, word design, common lexical database generation, and cross-lingual studies and investigation. Another important contribution of this ILCI corpus is the development of the guidelines for parts of speech tagging, which we call the BIS post tag set, that is a uniform pause tag sets as well as the pause tagging annotation guidelines for almost all the Indian languages. Initially, in the first phase, we have looked into the data of the medical domain and tourism domain for all the Indian languages. In the second part, in the second phase, we have also planned in the same manner, but this time it is agriculture domain and entertainment domain. And more number of languages are included, but number of sentences, parallel translation sentences is always also fixed here, 25,000 from each domain. Thus, in the second phase, 50,000 sentences for each of the languages involved in this project. Finally, I would say a few words about the LDC IL, similar to the LDC Linguistic Data Consortium of Pennsylvania University. The Government of India has established LDC IL, Linguistic Data Consortium in Indian languages, which is now working as an autonomous part of the Central Institute of Indian Languages, Mysore, where all the TDL corpus are housed, they are preserved there, and it is working for developing more resources, technology and tools, and archiving all the digital resources, digital linguistic resources developed in different language corpora. Besides that, at individual level and at organization level, we find some other efforts are being made by different groups to develop some text corpora, some speech corpora, some tools, some techniques for language processing and speech processing and different activities. But point is that the basic task of corpus generation in Indian languages as well as in other dialect varieties is not up to the mark as expected. So perhaps it is high time for us that we should divert our attention towards this, developing more corpora of different types in Indian languages and varieties, so that we can archive them, digitize them, process them, and utilize them for all kinds of activities related to language studies, language technology, language application, language planning, e-governance, and other parts. The final argument in this module is that we need corpora in Indian languages of various types, and also we need to train large number of people who can contribute in this field. So it is better to focus to this direction so that more people and more are engaged to generate more corpora in Indian languages. Thank you.